Hello, friends and brothers. This is Justin Jones with Masonic Improvement. We are joined here today with my co-host, Brother Dennis Yates.
Thank you. And not to go too deep into this Masonic bio, but I would like to express, a lot of our guest as being very big in AMD, very big in High 12 in Texas, and he served on many different committees and organizations and offshoots for Grand Lodge itself, as well as other grand jurisdictions. In this video, you will hear us call our brother and friend Right Worshipful because he is a past Grand Master for the state of Mexico. And without any further ado, I'd like to reintroduce you to Brother Roberto Sanchez.
How are you? Hey guys, brothers. I'm excellent,
Welcome.
Man. How are y'all?
Doing wonderful. We're so glad to have you on board.
It is my pleasure to be here, guys.
Yeah, this has been a long time coming, and I am so glad to be able to get you on before the real craziness starts and we start going through resolutions and all that kind of stuff. Once we do that, that kind of takes all of our time until we get to Grand Lodge.
Right.
So I'm glad we can make this date work.
I just want to say real quick, if I could go back several years to when we first started that, and someone said, "Hey, if you could just have any Mason on the show at all, just no questions asked on the show," Right Worshipful probably wasn't Right Worshipful at the time, but Roberto Sanchez would have been on the top of that list. So I am very excited to have you here.
That's very cool, man. Thank you. I'm humbled and honored to be here.
I tell you what, it's like I've told you before. Just knowing your Masonic resume, which I would like to put a copy of it on our link when we broadcast this. But just seeing your Masonic resume, I not only feel inept, I feel lazy, I feel I feel like that rock that's been sitting there at the end of the desert that never made it, that no one has ever seen in their life. And I also feel like a mushroom because we know where mushrooms grow. So, but compared to your resume, there is, I am definitely under a mushroom. That's for sure.
Would you be comfortable with us posting a copy of that?
Yeah, I have no problem with that. Go ahead.
Awesome.
One thing I'd like to know, and with this resume, it's obvious that you wanted light, but why did you join Freemason?
So that's an interesting question. I've always been a person that's like that wants to know what happens when certain things happen. I'm very intrigued by a lot of things, and I'm a huge history buff. So that's what originally attracted me to Freemason. You can't throw a dart anywhere in world history without Freemasons being involved in most historical events. So that's what originally attracted me to it. And the best teacher that I ever had, my geometry teacher of all teachers, was a Freemason. And every day during the entire year of class, he would have like the last 10 minutes of class just talk about his philosophies in life and what the world meant to him. And I look forward to that every day. And at the very last day of class, he told us, well, I'm this way because I'm a Freemason. And everything I've done under those 10 minutes every day in class were things that I learned in my Masonic journey. So ever since I was in 10th grade, I've been waiting to turn 21 so I could petition.
Wow.
So that was the catalyst that got me intrigued to knock on the door, so to speak.
Yes. Not only do I feel lazy, now I feel like Justin is lazy because I know he's not doing that.
Wow.
Well, I had to throw it out there.
Yeah. I know. I play. No, so that's really good. So the history aspect was really appealing to you.
Absolutely. Like, my whole thing was like either these men that were involved were great because Freemasonry made them great, or they were attracted to Freemasonry because of its greatness. And either way, that was something that I wanted to be a part of.
Which one do you think it is, out of curiosity?
So I think it's a little bit of both, to be honest. The whole philosophy of Freemasonry, the mantra, like we make good men better, is definitely there. Like good men are attracted to good things, and you are who you hang out with, right? So that definitely has something to do with it. And then obviously the teachings, the lessons of Freemasonry, the light that most of us seek. It's definitely there.
I agree. Yeah, I think it's a little of both as well.
There was a paper that I wrote that I brought that up that because we advertise it so much, it's marketed so much with Freemasonry that, you know, our forefathers were Masons and whatnot. And sometimes I wonder if they were destined to do that stuff anyways, because they were those type of people.
Right.
And then Freemasonry just happened to come into the mix and became the perfect institution to find people that you could truly trust and work with to get things done.
How did the reality of Freemasonry compare with your expectations once you got in?
So that's actually my story of how and why my resume is the way that it is. I did not find what I was looking for at all. My lodge now is a million times better than it used to be. But when I first joined Masonry, I joined in Houston, Texas, Gray Lodge 329. That's my mother lodge. And when I petitioned Gray Lodge, Gray had just sold their building and was meeting in another building. And the building we were meeting in didn't really want us there, but they wanted the money that was coming in via rent. So a lot of the past masters of the lodge did not want to sell the building. So we were just meeting to survive so we can get our new building built and move out of it. So when I joined, I expected all this light and everything's going to happen once I become a master mason and the meetings are going to be great. And I showed up to my very first meeting as a master mason and they slapped some spaghetti on a paper plate. And we had a meeting where we voted to pay, you know, the usual stuff, change the light bulbs and pay the bills, read the minutes. Okay, everybody go home. And within an hour, we wasted my time and I was baffled. I was like, no, this can't be it. So I was very disappointed with my original.
Was this at the time that you couldn't come into a lodge unless you were a master mason? Was that still in that era?
Yeah, that was still in the era. You have to be a master mason to come in. So I showed up every Thursday for instruction, missed very few of them. And then I would show up to every stated meeting just to have dinner. And then come 7:00, they'd be like, all right, you can go now. We're going to go into our meeting. And we got super secret stuff to do.
Mm-hmm.
And when I finally went to a meeting, I was like, this is not cool.
This is not what they hopped up to be.
Oh, absolutely. So I took the mantra, you're entitled to receive all the light this lodge can bestow, and you're allowed to travel and visit other countries. I took that very literal.
Mm-hmm.
And I set out in search of my true Masonic experience. It's out there. I just have to search for it.
I love that. Your story is not, this isn't about me but by any means, but your story is very similar to mine, but we went opposite directions in that you went deeper into Freemasonry to find it. And I just assumed that was all it had to offer. And I stepped away for a while. So it's very interesting to see how your own mentality can affect what you do once you get to that point. And I think a lot of people get to that point.
Oh, totally.
And a lot of people, a lot of people just aren't, they really don't, when you don't see the people in your lodge roaming around to other lodges, you think that, yeah, those are just words, but it's not really how it is. So you just kind of, some people think that you just stick with what you got. But, you know, I feel the same way, and I know Justin does. It's why I travel, and I not only travel in Texas, but, you know, all over the country and over into Mexico as well, because Freemasonry is so bold and beautiful. Not to steal the show from daytime television, but Freemasonry is so bold and beautiful that, you know, you just have to travel and see what all's out there. I want to see or actually participate in every degree I can before I die, because there's so many variations.
Oh, for sure.
Kudos to you for doing that, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
So with that being said, now you've traveled all around. This question is a little bit difficult because I would really like to know how you feel about it in Texas as well as in other areas, if you don't mind.
Sure.
What do you think the strengths and weaknesses are in Freemasonry?
There's the okay. So our biggest weakness is definitely not practicing what we preach. We sell this whole mantra of brothers look after each other. We will not defame the good name. And it's been my experience that the higher you climb the ladder, the further you go behind the grand east wall, the more of a shit show it is. Some of the most unmasonic conversations I've ever had or been privy to listen to have been behind the Grand East at Grand Lodge or at Masonic Week in the back room where all the who's who of Freemasonry are sitting around just picking on somebody and saying everything under the sun. So that I think that's our biggest downfall is really not practicing the tenets.
Yes.
The biggest strength is that we are a worldwide brotherhood. I've been very fortunate, as you said, to travel jurisdictions all over the world. I think I'm pushing 100 different jurisdictions at this point. I have them all written down. I have to sit down and count them again, but I think I'm pushing 100 now. And I mean, I've been to every jurisdiction in the U.S., so that's 50 of them right there. But I've never been to a lodge outside of the U.S. where I have not been greeted with open arms and treated like I was somebody's long lost brother. So that is definitely one of the greatest tendencies that I've noticed. The further I travel from home, the bigger the hug is when I get there.
I love that.
Absolutely.
And I think you can tell a lot about lodge, not to cut you off, Dennis. I'm sorry. But I've been to a lot of lodges, not as many as Dennis, or certainly not as many as you, but there are those lodges where you'll come in and they'll greet you like you are actually family. They'll actually embrace you, hug you, pat you on the back, like even be able to slap on the back, and you feel like you're at home. And there's other lodges where you're lucky if you get a handshake. Not to just call them out, but those lodges are the ones that are not going to be around much longer. I mean, if it's cold,
right.
no one wants to be there. It's the ones where if you actually feel welcome at a lodge, you're going to go there. If you don't feel welcome, you're not going to. That extends to visitors and existing members.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, and I have a story for both ends, and if you guys will indulge me, I'll tell you both stories real quick.
Absolutely.
Go ahead, please do.
The best lodge I've ever attended, as far as like reception and welcoming, I was in Germany on business. I travel a lot for work. I average about 120 flights a year between work and masonry. And I don't know, maybe about 8 years ago, maybe a little longer than that, I was in Germany for work, and it was over Christmas break. I got there like December 15th or so, and I was going to be there until the end of January. And let's say it was December 20th or so, give or take. I went to a lodge meeting that I found out was there, and everybody was really welcoming. I shook everybody's hand that was there. Everybody wanted to talk to me, practice their English. The lodge was obviously in German, so I did not understand a word of the actual meeting. But I mean, during the opening and closing, I knew what was happening. Ritual the same, right? Mm-hmm. And everybody treated me really nice, hugged me, like everything was great. And Germany shuts down on the 24th. Like nothing's open. Like not a 7-Eleven, not a restaurant, like nothing. Everything's closed on the 24th. And 24th, I just bought a bunch of snacks the day before, and I was just going to camp out in the room. And about 8:30 in the morning, there's a knock on my door. It was one of the brothers that I shook the hand. Like that's it. That was it. I shook his hand, and he showed up. And he's like, "You're not going to spend Christmas alone. Get showered, get dressed, or come into my house." And I went, spent Christmas Eve and Christmas Day with his family. I was brother Roberto from the Americas. And they got me a gift. They got me like a polo shirt for Christmas. Like, I mean, they treated me like I was their long lost cousin that I haven't seen forever. And to this day, that brother still sends me a Christmas card. I sent him a Christmas card, and we've stayed in touch for the last decade. And every Christmas we talk at least on that day because I mean, yeah, I was part of his family.
That's beautiful.
So it's that was a really cool story. Just I mean, being outside of the country, and he refused to take no for an answer. I was going to go with him and spend Christmas with his family.
Wow.
That's real charity right there. That's the charity of Freemasonry.
Absolutely.
That's brotherly love and affection in its best form right there. I love that story. I can't even say that I have anything close to that kind of a story. That's awesome. Well, I have some close stuff, but not
Yeah.
They live here in this town.
Right, Marshall. I saw that you're a member of St. Albans. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah, that's actually one of the best lodges in the world by far.
So
I've been to hundreds of them, and St. Albans is the real deal for sure.
So I have a similar story, not quite like traveling overseas. However, I was doing some. It was basically like a workshop over at College Station. I was at A&M doing a physics workshop, and I saw that St. Albans was having a meeting, and I've always heard good things about St. Albans. So I packed the suit with me, and I reached out to the secretary, and I was like, I just want to go sit at the steady meeting and just see what it's all about. And so I go in there, and everybody's super friendly. I didn't really know what to expect, right? I felt like I was out of my element, but everyone was really friendly. And then the meeting's over, and I think it was Pete Norman.
Yeah, secretary.
Yes, it was. Okay, it was Pete Norman. And he comes up to me as we're leaving. He's like, hey, we all go to such and such restaurant after for dinner. We'd like you to come. And I was like, well, I appreciate that, but I'm just going to head back to the dorm. He's like, no, you don't understand. You're coming with us. So he wasn't going to take no for an answer. And so I go to the restaurant, and we have a meal. And then after the meal, I'm getting ready to leave again. And Pete's like, hey, just so you know, yeah, we all come to my house after. And I was like, well, thanks, I appreciate that, but I'm going to go. He's like, no, you don't understand. You're coming to my house. So it was That's very, awesome. I felt very welcome there. I really enjoyed the camaraderie.
Yeah, St. Albans is one of the coolest lodges in the world. They were traditional observance before traditional observance was a thing. Like we don't even consider ourselves part of the traditional observance movement. We're a best practices lodge that's been doing it. But literally, it's the first one. Before it was cool. That whole concept of doing things in threes. We have lodge, we have a dinner, we have an agape or a meeting at social hour at somebody's house, and like you're supposed to attend all three.
Interesting.
So
that was actually what turned me on at St. Albans. It was after I had left Freemasonry for a while, and I was doing research, and I stumbled upon traditional observance, and St. Albans came up for whatever reason. Even though if you call St. Albans traditional observance, they quickly correct you and say they're best practices. But that's what turned me on to that lodge, and it was a great time.
Like I said, that they were the model. All the Masonic Restoration Foundation and every lodge that claims to be traditional observance, like the model was St. Albans. That was the first lodge to do that in College Station, Texas, back in 1992, when Pete Norman and several others decided they needed Masonry in their Masonic lodges. So they made it happen.
Well, it's a fantastic lodge for sure.
That's great that we have those type of lodges out there for examples, because right now in today's Freemasonry, it seems like we're seeing more and more brothers coming in the door that are looking for that exact thing.
Oh,
but I'll let you talk about that a little bit further here in a little bit. Go ahead, Justin. I'm sorry.
Oh no, I was also just going to underscore, I guess, a comment you made. Some of the most toxic conversations in our fraternity do happen in the places you would not expect. I remember being at Grand Lodge and hearing some very surprising things from people I did not expect it from, and it was toxic, and it's very sad to see. I'm not saying it's any current leadership or anything like that, but it's very sad to see that in people that I think as Masons, we're all supposed to look up to our Martial Master, and as Master Masons, as members of the Grand West, we're all supposed to look at our Grand Lodge officers as leadership, and everything rolls downhill, right? So if there's toxicity up at the top, it affects everything below it, and that's just very sad to see that. So
I agree.
Where do you see, and let's kind of take the same approach Dennis did. Let's look at from a Texas perspective, but then also if you want to look at it on the grander scale, we can definitely do that. But where do you see our current course taking us in the next 10, 20, or 30 years?
That's a good question. It all depends on the jurisdiction, to be completely honest. And as you mentioned, what the leadership does. One of my biggest mentors always taught me, we respect the man, we respect the office. So you're never going to catch me say something bad about a worshipful master or the Grand Master of any jurisdiction, because he's the Grand Master and that's who we swore to uphold, right?
Mhm.
But the day after he gets installed, I'll tell you anything you want to know. And that's how that sliding scale works, right? So right now, the climate in Texas is set a turmoil. We're on the verge of a revolution, to be completely honest. The things that have happened in Texas, I mean, I cannot go anywhere in the world, anywhere, without a Mason pulling me aside and going, what the hell is going on in Texas? What are you guys doing right now?
Wow.
Like, I was just in Louisville for the Masonic Rosicrucians, the SRICF Grand session, literally last weekend. And you have Masons from all over the United States, literally all over the world. 2 people from Brazil, from Canada, from England, from Scotland, come down to this meeting, Portugal. And everybody that I'm friends with asked me, hey, what the hell is going on in Texas? Like, charges being filed against the Grand Junior Warden, charges being filed against the Junior Past Grand Master. Like, it's a pissing match of whose apron is bigger. And it's bad. It's bad. And unfortunately, it's what I mentioned earlier. I mean, there's conversations that have taken place behind the Grand East where people have said, like, you know what, this guy's climbing too fast. This guy's changing my Freemasonry, and we need to stop it. I mean, we'll use Brad Billings as an example. Like him, love him, hate him. Like, you cannot argue the fact that there was more activity in 2022 than any other year in the last 30 years of Masonry.
Absolutely.
At least in the last 20 that I've been a member, almost. I've never seen a Grandmaster do as much, right, wrong, or indifferent. Like, there was more activity last year than any other year that I've been to Texas Mason. And that ruffled some feathers. Mm-hmm. Again, opinions aside, right, wrong, or indifferent, that's undisputably, unarguably the most active year, period. Mm-hmm. Right? And people are trying to shut that down. And that's been the norm in Texas. I'm going to go on a tangent now, so you can forgive me and cut me off if I go too much off the deep end. But
by all means,
I've seen this playbook. I know how this story ends. I know what the ultimate goal is because I lived through it. 10 years ago, I did something that I was summoned to the past Grand Master's office during, like, the Grand Masters. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about. There's a office for Grand Masters behind the Grand East at Grand Lodge.
Exactly where you're talking about.
And in 2013, while I was district deputy, I was summoned there. As a matter of fact, the errand boy was Brad Billings. I was district deputy, and the past Grand Master sent Brad Billings to come get me so they can have a talk with me. And I'm not going to say who was in the room, but I guess you guys can probably figure out who it is. But the main guy was a guy from San Antonio. And he kind of scolded me because he heard that I was going to join the Masonic Rosicrucians without his permission. And I had to explain to him, like, no, that wasn't, like, the Supreme Magus, the Grand Master of that order, invited me and called me and asked me to charter a second college in Texas. I didn't ask for this. He called me. And we went back and forth. And unbeknownst to me at the time, both those guys were like mortal enemies. The Grand Master of the Rosicrucians and this particular Grand Master from San Antonio hated each other. They still do. And at the end of the talk, he was like, Roberto, you don't understand. Either you are going to side with him or you're going to side with me. You can't have it both ways. So either you tell him to f himself or me to f myself. Make your call right now. And I wasn't going to be part of that discussion. Got up, patted him on the shoulder, and walked out of the room. And that was December. Within 3 months, I had 10 Masonic charges filed against me.
Wow.
And they didn't go to trial for years. And I showed the Grand Master at the time in 2014 when that happened, Jerry Martin, like, I pleaded my case. I showed him how all the charges against me were false. And he just kind of kicked the can down. Next year was 2015. Same thing. I kind of pleaded my case, showed all the evidence, showing them that this was just an attack on me and my character, and they were all false. And he ordered 2 more charges to be filed against me. So now we're at 12. And wow. During those things, like, the trial kept on getting kicked down. I was not getting any information from Grand Lodge, and my name was dragged through the mud for years. And I kind of got this reputation of being the lightning rod. He's a maverick and he'll do whatever he wants, and he's going to get kicked out of Masonry. And then the guy from San Antonio started a rumor that I work for the cartels and that I'm a drug lord. And that's how I get the money to travel the world and do what I do. And that rumor, to this day, he's still telling it. I got a call this weekend while I was in Louisville from one of the past Grand Masters of the High 12. He pulled me aside and goes, "Hey, your friend from San Antonio just called me to tell me that I needed to be careful with you because you deal drugs and you are a part of the cartel. That's how you have money to travel the world like you do." Wow. Anyways, back to the story. For years they kept on doing this, and it ended up being 12 Masonic charges. And after 4 years, I finally went to trial and was able to prove my innocence. And after it was found that all 12 Masonic charges that were bogusly charged against me, I didn't get an "I'm sorry." I didn't get a letter from Grand Lodge like saying that I've been cleared of all charges. Nothing. They kind of just swept it under the rug and pretended like nothing happened. Just because I flew too close to the sun and did something they did not want me to do. And now we're having the same thing.
That's a good analogy.
Right.
Flying too close to the sun. Because every time someone starts to really soar, it seems like this is what happens.
Oh yeah.
Wow.
What's interesting is I know that, all those people that were kicking the can, they all belong to a certain group that could have talked to each other and decided that this was going to be the course of action. Just like what happens, nowadays. I'm sure that it's the same group that's causing the stress today that caused it back in your time as well.
100%, it's the same people. 100%. I've heard them say it, and it's unfortunate. But I mean, we live in a world now, in a Masonic world, that the form is that if somebody is becoming a problem, instead of doing the Masonic thing and doing what our obligations and our teachings tell us, they're like, go whisper good counsel in his ear, go talk to him, go tell him like, "Hey, what you're doing is ruffling some feathers." Like, nothing. None of that happened because I didn't get any of those phone calls. I didn't get any of those whispering good counsels. I never got nothing. It was just, well, this guy's doing something we don't like. How can we get rid of him? What charge can we make up that we can get him on? And let's wait for him to slip up. And as soon as he does, bam, charges are filed, and we'll see how much we can throw against the wall and see what sticks. And it's up to us as Masons to demand that our leaders just do what Masons do. That we can find a way where we can best work and best agree and whisper that good counsel instead of finding what charges we can file and how we can attack our enemies.
Yeah, we should not be treating the Masonic charges as a political tool.
Oh yeah, never intended there to that. Like the charges in any jurisdiction. Like I talk about this all the time. The law book here in Texas right now is 586 pages. That is ridiculous. For a living, I work for the rail industry. I'm a regulatory manager for the rail industry. So I deal with rules and regulations regarding trains, like the things that carry very dangerous chemicals across state lines and across borders. Like the law book for that is less than the Grand Lodge of Texas. Like this is a comparison. Right? Wow. And on that same train, in Mexico, the Grand Lodge of the state of Mexico, the law book is 8 pages, 8.5 by 11, folded in half, for a total of 16 pages. That's the law book, right? So wow. Their laws, they're very concise. I mean, you just like act like a Mason, do what you're supposed to do. Like they're very, very to the point. Like these are the powers of the Grand Master. This is what you can get in trouble for. Don't do this and live your life as a Mason. And that's the extent of it. Outside of that, we give the power to the Worshipful Master, the Grand Master, to figure out what needs to happen. And if somebody breaks those laws, then we have a trial, but it's unheard of. I had never heard of a trial happening in Mexico, ever. Ever.
Right.
I'd like to ask you, sorry, go ahead, Dennis.
It just seems that so much is in there to control us that it removes the freedom out of Freemasonry.
Oh, for sure.
And what's totally ironic is that the Grand Lodge was formed in 1837 in Texas, and it was like what was it? Almost 30 years before the first law book was even introduced to to Texas Freemasonry with the Grand Lodge. It's just amazing to me how we can go that long and function well and grow a state through Freemasons, and then now we can't even get the state to recognize us in a lot of areas, and our law book has just gone crazy.
Oh, for sure.
Right, Marshall, I'd like to ask a follow-up question based off something you said, and if I completely understand if you don't want to go down this road, but I am curious because I agree with you. You said that we're looking at the precipice. We're looking down at what could become a Masonic revolution in Texas, and I felt that way since January. And I don't think that so many people have said it, but I think that is what a lot of people feel. I think they feel, especially with things as they are now, January is going to be a very interesting time in Grand Lodge,
for sure.
Depending on which way things go by the end of this year. I'm curious, do you feel or do you believe that the leadership is aware of this, or do they just not care?
So I'm going to choose my next words carefully because I'm going to state the line of Masonic charges, right? They're definitely aware. I'm friends with people on both sides of this issue, right? And I have become very vocal over the last 10 years because of what happened to me. So I've gotten to the point where I no longer care to mind my P's and Q's. I'm going to tell you what I think, and if you don't like it, I'm sorry, right? But definitely both sides know what's happening, and the powers that be are well aware of what's happening. There's rumors that there's going to be people running for different offices. So the past Grand Masters are very well prepared to run a past Grand Master for Grand Master if that happens. And then there's also plans to run against Jim Rumsey. That's the latest rumor I heard today, that they're running somebody against Jim Rumsey this year, right? The guy that just won in a 5-man race on the first ballot by a landslide. They're going to run somebody against him for Grand, Deputy Grand Master? No, Grand Senior Warden.
He'll be senior.
Yeah, Grand Senior Warden. Yeah. So they're running somebody against for Grand Senior Warden. And really? Okay. But they're that enthralled that they have the votes and that people are going to blindly listen to them, because that's how it's been forever. It's a pocket of past grandmasters that say this is our guy, and that's usually who wins. Mm-hmm. That's what happened with Brad. I'll use that as an example again. When Brad was running, it was the past grandmasters were split between Clay Smith and Russell Brown. And Brad was called by several past grandmasters and said, "Don't run. It's not your time yet. We're backing this guy, and I forbid you to run." And Brad told him, "Hey, it's an election. I'm running. If they beat me, they beat me, but it's an election." Mm-hmm. And he won, and he lost the respect of a lot of the past grandmasters. But that's where it came from.
Wow. That this concept that you have to be vetted by the powers that be before you can even be considered for election is absurd.
I agree. It's better than some other jurisdictions, right? I mean, talking about comparisons, in Indiana, there is a reading of the unwritten law. I'll say it again, the reading of the unwritten law, where prior to elections is the first thing on their docket, and the most senior past grandmaster present reads the unwritten law, where he pulls out a scroll that has nothing on it, and he reads the unwritten law. And the unwritten law is that nobody can run for any office. Everybody just moves up, and the grandmaster is going to appoint the grand junior steward. I think that's what it is, and that's it. And there's no election. So the grand junior steward gets appointed, and then every year he just moves up. And when it comes down to junior warden, they just elect the senior deacon. And so if you get to senior steward or junior steward and just kind of keep your nose clean, eventually you'll be Grand Master.
Wow.
But that's something they get up and they do it. And first time I saw it, I kind of just shook my head and was like, what clandestine backwards organization is this? And I give Indiana a lot of grief because I'm friends with a lot of people in Indiana. But every time that I attend their session, like I'm doing one of these, the guy sitting next to me that brought me, like, here it comes, reading the unwritten law. So at least we are democratic in Texas. Like we do have a vote, and past masters and lodge representatives get that vote. But
I think the concern, and I don't think I've been very vocal about this, but I think the concern is that, especially after December, not December, after January of this year with the shenanigans that happened then, it's almost, if we're not careful, it can almost just end up like that. Because if the wrong guy, quote unquote, runs for an office, then we just throw charges at him and do everything, we keep him out. Do anything we can to keep the process from being democratic, because that's not who we approved. And what I mean by that is, really, you take away the Grand West ability to have an actual duly constitutionally elected officer at that point, because if they could just throw charges at whoever and do whatever they can to upset that, it defeats the entire purpose.
Oh, for sure. For sure. I mean, I'm trying to pick the right words again to say this, but I'm using Jim Rumsey as an example. Like, Jim Rumsey was backed by all the parties. All the past grandmasters had vetted him. This was their guy, until they approached them and said they were going to file charges against Brad, and they want him to blindly follow. And when he told them, like, I'm not going to blindly follow, they need to be legitimate, that's kind of when that whole thing changed, and they looked for something, and they got something that was not a Masonic offense, but they try to make it into a Masonic offense. And just like my case, they painted this story to make it look like what the actual truth was 100 times worse than what it was. So the charges against Rumsey was that he broke into the Grand Lodge Library Museum and was drinking. That never happened, but that's what is against the law: breaking in and drinking inside of the building, not on the property, not on the building, not next to the building. The law states that you cannot drink in it. That never happened. And when the charges were filed against Jim, he filed charges against the people that wrote the charges against him, because they had exchanged a bottle of wine in an open lodge, which that's a Masonic offense. You cannot possess intoxicating liquors inside of a lodge building. And during a meeting, one guy gave a bottle of wine to another guy, and therefore both guys had it. And they just happened to be the Grand Lodge people that filed the charges against Rumsey. So all charges were dropped, the ones that Jim wrote and the other ones, and then they just ran people against him. And when he won, they had that charade they put on in front of God and everybody, and they put it on YouTube for the whole world to watch. And it was the exact same charges, copied and pasted. Just somebody else signed them as the people signing the charges instead of the original people. So
usually when you hear rumors of things like that, they either people back out at the last minute, or they make some kind of a deal, or it's just totally just fabricated and never really happens. And there was a lot of conversation in January that was going to happen at that specific time. And I think we were all just waiting for the other shoe to drop. And
for sure.
Sure enough, it happened exactly like the rumors said it was going to happen. And
a lot of those guys were bragging about it. You had past grandmasters in Houston at the Houston Scottish Rite talking about how that's what they were going to do, and who was going to get up and speak, and what Clay was going to do. And I mean, it was a planned, orchestrated, premeditated attack. They all knew it was going to happen. They were bragging about it. So that's where all the rumors came from. They came from past grandmasters that had discussed this plan. That's not okay. That's not what we're electing these guys for. We're electing them to lead us. They're electing them to be the representative of us, not to sit on their throne. I mean, like, they're servants. They serve us, not the other way around. We give them the respect because they're in that title of position, but they serve us, and we need to remember that. We're putting them there. They're our representatives. They're serving us. We're not serving them. We respect the man. We respect the title while he has it. We respect that honor. But they serve us.
I agree. Everything good, Dennis?
Yeah. If we'll talk about it, and here after the official video is done, then we three can talk about the call I just got.
Okay. I love those conversations.
Right. But anyways, yeah, you're absolutely right that it is servant leadership, and I can't remember the last time. Well, I can remember. It was well, I love Ken as well, and Paul was great. But I really like Tommy, and I still call him most worshipful because he was good to everybody. He was personable. He always treated everybody with respect that I could see. Now I don't know how it is in this big city of Houston, but but he was more of the, well, he was a working Mason's grandmaster, really. And we
I
all
agree with
and
that.
we all saw it that way. He was personable that way. And up until, well, and Ken and Paul were very, very much like that. But up until Brad, man, it was pretty dry up until the last 3 years. But Brad was probably the most approachable grandmaster that I've seen, to be honest. And that's the way it should be.
You were talking about the leadership aspect, and it made me think it was last year Dennis and I volunteered at officer leadership training, and I remember being at the lunch line. Where was that at? I think it was in
As in Corpus.
no. It was in Fort Worth. We were in Fort Worth. I'm pretty sure at the Fort Worth Temple, and I'm going through the line, and I look up. I'm at the I think it was Beans or whatever. It didn't matter. But I look up, and it's most worshipful at the time, Billings. He's back there with an apron on, serving people as they come through, and that always stuck with me because he was and he is such a servant leader, and I think that was part of the reason he was so wildly successful is because he ran and served his entire year as in service to Texas Freemasonry. And I think that's why he did so well, and why, I mean, you could just do a picture comparison, compare all the major events last year to the major events this year, and just look at how many people are there. And a lot of it's also charisma. I don't doubt that also has a huge aspect, but I think he had such a different approach towards his Freemasonry and towards leadership that's why it's so important that you approach any kind of leadership position in Freemasonry with that service mentality.
Again, I mean, the people, he who is foremost at ranks will be foremost in service. I mean, that's the mantra that Masonry teaches. Like we're the guys on their ivory tower aren't there to be on their ivory tower. They're there to be the lead servant. Period. If the guy at the top isn't willing to roll up his sleeves and lead by example, he shouldn't be leading.
I agree.
And that doesn't just go for Masonry. That goes for any position, but specifically in Masonry because that's what we teach.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Absolutely.
Exactly. Yeah, I personally believe that we have the potential of getting to where we want to be, but it's going to take a good, strong Grand West to make that decision.
Yeah.
We have people who are very much like that are just in it for the good of Freemasonry. And that's one of the things that has always bothered me the most about any charges, no matter who they're against, right? If you look at the intent, start looking at it with what's their intent instead of what's their motive, because when we look at motive, it automatically creates a negative pretense that's going to cloud our judgment when we're looking at a brother. If we look at the heart of our brother, the intent of what's happening, it seems like we will come out on the right side every time.
And I think if you can't figure out the intent, look at the timing, because that's never a coincidence either.
No, for sure. I have a very good friend who's a Freemason, and he's gone through his ups and downs because he's been in several grand positions, and he almost demitted this year just because some of the stuff that's happening. He used to be a Texas Mason, but he demitted from Texas, so he's no longer a Texas Mason, but he's still in his home state. But he's got this saying that we always joke around with that I try to remember that whenever I get kind of tied up in Masonry, is that there's a fine line between being an esotericist or a student of light or a Freemason or a grown man playing dress up. And there's a very fine line. And you're either part of this fraternity because you enjoy something that this fraternity has to offer, whether it's the fellowship, whether it's the degrees, whether it's the ritual, whether it's the philanthropy. There's something that's attracting you to it that makes you a Freemason. Then you want to study and call yourself one because it means something to you, because you want to be a Freemason, because you want to be associated to whatever that group or that bubble that you have encased yourself in. But then there's that line where if you cross it, you're just a grown man playing dress up. You're just a guy sitting there collecting your jewels, wearing your pins, filling up your lapel pin with 100 different lapels, seeing how many jewels you can put on one breast and how many aprons you can collect and what different colored hats and what different teapot you can have and another certificate on the wall. And it's a very fine line. And we as Freemasons need to bring ourselves down every once in a while and understand that when we put on that apron, when we put on that fess, that chapeau for the Knights Templars, that ancient garb for the 32nd degree when we're conferring it, or the 18th, or whatever Masonic organization we are playing in, we need to remember the emblems that are there mean something. The light that's being produced means something. What we're doing in that organization means something. And when we forget those teachings, when we forget what we're doing, when we forget that the Lanskin is the highest award you will ever get, that no prince, king, potentate, you guys all know the ritual, can bestow, then you just cross that line into, you're just a parrot. You're repeating some words because you have to, and you're just a grown man playing dress up. You're putting on your jewel and your apron and you're saying, kiss the ring because I'm special, or I'm going to wear this white hat because that makes me somebody better than you because you're wearing a different colored hat or a different shape or whatever. It's a fine line, and we just need to remember that.
Yeah, I agree. I have a friend. He's a Mason, and he has no family legacy or anything like that. So he's a Mason, but he's kind of from the outside looking in at the same time, if that makes sense.
Sure.
And he's pretty new to the fraternity, and I used to work with him, and he made the comment before with all the just people with their titles and stuff. And I think he actually used that same phrase. He's like, what is the purpose? You have all these men, grown men playing dress up with these titles, seeking these titles that really to the outside world don't mean anything. And they're just trying to make themselves feel important. And that really struck me because he absolutely right. To us, these titles are important. We show the respect as they should be. Definitely, like you said, respect the office, respect the position. However, from the outside looking in, this might not have always been the case, and it might not be the case all across the world. But at least here, from the outside looking in, those titles don't mean anything. Most people don't know what they mean or anything. And so we have these people that chase these titles and put these pins and everything, like you said. But there's only a handful of people that really recognize what that even means.
Yeah, I'm one of those guys that I don't want to ruin my suit with all the medals and stuff that I have, especially from AMD. I mean, that in itself could be one breast. I mean, you look like the latest dictator if you put them all on at the same time. But one thing that I like to consider is that if the majority of the light that you offer is a reflection off of all the medals and awards on your breast.
Nice.
Yeah, I feel like that's like a line to lead into one of those "you might be a redneck" jokes, from back in the day. Yeah, but that's to me that's how I see it. I don't generally put on all my medals and stuff. They're in a box in my third bedroom.
Yeah, I'm not big on lapel
for
pins.
that very reason. I wear a couple of lapel pins because I love the Scottish Rite Research Society, and I love my Grand Lodge of the Republic of Texas lapel pin that I have. But other than that, that's it. I'm gonna be a pirate.
So Dennis, I had the last question, and I kind of did a two-part there. Do you want to hit the next one?
Sure. I didn't know where we were at since
We are on
so
number 6.
now going back to our weaknesses. What would you do at this point to change course and correct some of those weaknesses? If let's say, and we ask everybody this question. Let's say you have this magic ball and or this lamp, and you can make the wishes that are going to fix Freemasonry. What would those wishes be?
Go back to the basics. Go back to the basics. I mean, I said that earlier, right? Like the higher you get up the ladder and the further east you go, the darker it becomes, right? And it shouldn't be that way. I wish I could go back to my blissfully brand new Master Mason, where I believe that every Master Mason knew their obligation and everybody acted by it. And we need to get back to the basics. That would fix a lot of this stuff, in my opinion. If we all remember that these titles are titles that we have earned for service, but you still have to be a servant. That you're still wearing that white leather apron, and the significance of what that means. That would be the biggest thing. If I had a magic 8-ball or whatever, that could take us back in time and fix it, or a magic wand, or whatever you want to call it, is being a society of.
You brought up the 8-ball. You're showing your age now.
But how? I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but how do we do that? Like, say there's no magic involved. Say just someone's in a position of leadership. How do we actually tackle that? Because you have to teach people to unlearn certain behaviors, right? And Texas is a big state. I'm curious, like how someone would begin to approach that.
All right. Well, I'll dive into this, and again, I'll try my hardest not to escape the law, because again, there's a lot of topics here that could be tweaked into Masonic charges. But to be completely honest, I mean, it's. I'll use Brad again as an example. When Brad got elected, he had all these plans that he wasn't able to bring into fruition because he was put under gag order as he was going through the thing. There's certain steps that you have to do if you want to advance to the next step, into the next step, into the next step. So as you progress in the grand line, it's been my observation that when somebody gets elected as Grand Junior Warden, they're elected bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, and they have all these ideas. And I've never seen anybody show up with these ideas, and when they get to be Grand Master, it's the same thing. It's something completely different when they get to the other side, because they have to play the game. They want to become Grand Master because now they've developed and spent all this time and energy and money into getting elected, that they want to continue. They don't want to be dropped out. They don't want to have some past Grand Master run against them, or whatever the case may be. So they have to conform and play the game to advance. And by the time they get to be Grand Master, the original agenda is out the window, and they're just trying to salvage and draw straws of what can I do that's not going to stir the pot or do that. So if you want to change something, you need somebody in office that's not going to care. That's going to give zero fucks what anybody's going to do, and they're going to do what they feel that needs to be done to fix what needs to be fixed. That's the bottom line. If you want something to change, you're going to have to put it on the table and let the Grand West work. Let the Grand West do what they want. Let the majority. And if the majority votes one way, you accept one way or another. If I want to make everybody wear pink hats to Grand Lodge and I make that resolution and it passes, well, great. If it doesn't, I can't force it. That's not what happens. That's not how this works. It's a democracy. Mm-hmm. So that's how you would change that, is somebody that's not willing to sell their ideals to get the title.
I wholeheartedly agree with what you're saying. There's nothing scarier to people that are following a certain set of rules than someone that doesn't care about the rules.
Oh, yeah. One of my biggest Masonic mentors always told me the most dangerous man in any room is the man who can't be bought.
Mm-hmm.
The man that you can't flash the title in front of him and tell him, if you don't do this, you don't get this. And I cannot tell you how many times I've been threatened by, if you don't do this, you're not going to get this carrot. And catch me outside, let's go. And I do just that. I mean, I rabbit hole again. A couple weekends ago, I belonged to the CBCS in Belgium, and before I joined that, same thing. The CBCS is one of the most exclusive, coolest Masonic degrees or orders that's out there. It exists here in the United States, and prior to 2012, it was very, very limited. And I got invited to join in Belgium, so I went. And before I joined, I was told, like, yeah, you're going to get into a lot of trouble if you join this. It's a regular Masonic order. I'm getting invited. I'm not seeking this. I'm not asking for this. They're presenting it to me. And there's been 3 different occasions since I've joined. 3. Where a man from this part of the world who is a member has gotten onto an airplane and flown to Belgium to defame me and discredit me and try to lie to those people and tell them that I'm a bad person, that I belong to the cartel or whatever they can make up, and try to get me kicked out. The most recent one was 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago, a man that we know flew to Belgium and had a discussion with the Grand Prior and the Grand Master, and told them how much of a bad apple I was and that I belonged to all these clandestine groups or whatever he said. And I had to prove that wasn't the case to retain my membership. But like 3 different times for that one particular organization, where I had to prove to other people that I wasn't, because
it is absurd.
I didn't kiss the ring. But
it is absurd how much time and energy people will put into defaming someone like that.
3 times flown to Belgium, not like sent an email, not had a Skype call or a Zoom call, got on an airplane and flew for a meeting. Like
all those other things can be recorded.
Right. So
man, that's terrible. That's really disheartening in what I personally fight against in Freemasonry. I can't believe that my ancestor did all that he did to bring a Masonic lodge to North Texas for that. I just can't believe it. He came in with, as a county clerk, and then found it and then chartered the first lodge. Actually came down and got the charter from Houston and from Sam Houston, and went back up to North Texas to start a lodge. And I just can't believe that that's what he had in mind for Freemasonry in Texas today when he did that.
Well, I guarantee you it wasn't. I mean, going back to what I said earlier, you got to go back to the roots. Our lessons are important. Everything that we say in Masonry is there for a reason. We just need to practice what we preach. If we are supposed to spread the cement of brotherly love and affection, then we need to spread the cement of brotherly love. I mean, like it's in the ritual. Mm-hmm. We say it, and it's monitorial for some of it. The one what I'm saying now, so I can't get in trouble for repeating it. But it it's all there, and we live by these precepts, or we're supposed to, and we all quote them and say that this is what we're proud to be Masons. But I mean, if we don't practice what we preach, if we don't do our tenets and do what our degrees teach us, I mean, are we Masons? Or are we parrots playing pretend? Are we grown men wearing dress-ups?
I think along the lines of grown men playing dress-up, I always go back to something Chris Williams said at our summit. You have there's a line in the fraternity. You have Masons and you have members or grown men playing dress-up. And unfortunately, the process of going through offices in the fraternity does not differentiate between Masons and grown men playing dress up, but it does favor grown men playing dress up because they're willing to do things that actual Masons that actually follow their obligations are not willing to do.
Again, in the genius of Freemasonry, in any esoteric organization, if there's offices, but there's lessons in every one of the offices too. So there's a mini degree in every office you hold, whether it's steward, whether it's senior deacon, whether it's junior warden, whatever office you're holding in a lodge, there's a degree in there. There's a lesson to be done. There's a job that you have that's supposed to teach you something. And these lessons aren't for somebody that's in their 60s to be learning. This is for a young man to like help mold his life to become a better person, right? So every office, as a Tyler, you're guarding your brothers. As a steward, you're serving them. As a deacon, you're teaching them. As a warden, you're managing them. There's a degree in all of them.
Mm-hmm.
It's just there for the explorer to actually find what's there and understand that what we're doing, the sequence of events, the motions, the words that are coming out of, they all have meaning. We just need to find them as an explorer and know, like, yeah, there's something here, and let's study this. Why are we doing this? And if you're studying what is there, you'll find the meaning, and you should be able to go through that office or whatever and leave with that office with a lesson instead of a teacup that says, "Here's my T-shirt. This is what I got from it." Right? It's what reward are you getting? Are you walking out of there with that lesson? Did you leave that organization in a better place when you left it than when you found it? Or are you walking out with a new hat?
Yeah.
That's what it boils down to.
I think a lot of what you've touched on tonight is right in line with what we've been talking about, really for the past 6 months to a year, which is, that we are in a renaissance. And brothers are starting to realize the importance of education and the importance of esoteric knowledge as opposed to memorizing the catechism. And there's people who are expecting more, just like you joined and I had some as well, that for the historical nature of the fraternity, the honor, the prestige of being in the same upon the same level as those brothers did, were except today, being that I would be considered an equal with George Washington. It just behooves me, right? So that was one of the lessons that I grasped onto when I first started. But now we're starting to see brothers come in that they're educated on that history. They're educated on a lot of our precepts and tenets and virtues and all the things in Freemasonry. They're educated on Hermetic principle. They're educated on Kabbalah. They're really coming to us, looking for us to unpack that for them and help them to be able to utilize what they've learned on the internet, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that if we do exactly what you've been saying, get back to the basics, we'll be more prepared to help them through that journey.
Oh, for sure.
At this point, unless either one of y'all just has something you want to touch on before we do that, I'd like to open up to final thoughts.
But what it boils down to, in my opinion, right? It's we just need to remember our precepts. There's been very few people in my life as a Mason that I would not be willing to put everything behind us and shake hands and act like brothers, because that's what we're taught to do. And we take obligations that say that I would not be willing to lay down my sword, yada yada yada, right? But that's what we as Masons should be willing to do is help each other out, open up doors. I mean, I would gladly have any Master Mason in Texas come over to my house and hang out with us just because we're brothers. Like I believe in that. I believe that if you've made it that far, if you've taken that obligation, that I can open the door to my house and you can come in and have dinner with my family and we're going to be safe. And I believe that. I believe that is still a possibility. I believe that is a possibility. There's bad apples in every bunch, but I think that could be corrected too. So I just kind of wish we got back to the basics.
Dennis, do you have anything you want to add, or you want me to go?
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I know we're all probably all feel like we're skating the line a little bit this evening, but I think this is a conversation that needed. It's long overdue. It's long overdue. It needs to be had, and I'm also kind of at the point where if we can't have the conversations that need to be had, what's even the point? I'll also say the word revolution has been thrown out a few times this evening. And Dennis also mentioned the Masonic Renaissance. And as he's talking about that, I'm thinking, well, which is it? Is it a Renaissance, or are we looking at some kind of something more dramatic, like a revolution here? And I kind of started thinking about history, because usually when granted, there's only one historic Renaissance, but Renaissance was characterized by like a sense of like enlightenment, right? People actually learning and educating themselves and growing. And that preceded a lot of revolutions, because people were thinking outside that box that they had been kept in so long. And I think here in Texas, we've kept ourselves intellectually in a box for a very long time. We just accept things as they are. And now we have, like Dennis also pointed out, I think it was Dennis, he also pointed out, we have a lot of people that we promise light, and they're coming expecting what we promise. Right? We promise the value of taking good men and make them better, and that's what they're coming for. We promise that product, and that's what they come to get from us. And when they find that, also like Roberto Sanchez says, when they come and all they're getting is business meetings and spaghetti, and there's no light and drama from the top, they leave. And if that's for the new people. The new people leave, or they do like he did, and they dive deeper. But I think, to my point, the more deeply ingrained you are, the less likely you are just to walk away, and that creates a predicament, because we have a lot of very deeply entrenched young Masons in the fraternity now that they don't want to see the same kind of Freemasonry as their fathers or grandfathers. They want to see the actual real Freemasonry that they were promised, not a service club, not a bunch of fish fries, not chili dogs for dinner or anything like that. They want actual, real, authentic Freemasonry. And if it can't be delivered, there's only a few options. But they'll get it. They will get it, because what's the alternative?
Yeah,
those are my thoughts.
Right. I mean, you leave, or you find it, or you go out looking for it. And it's kind of the example that you gave yourself, right? Like, we joined around the same time. When I didn't find my experience, I went to go look for it. You took a step out, right? And those are the options. But I'm with you 100%. I mean, you mentioned all the things that we were talking about earlier with the spaghetti on paper plates. Like, that's a line literally right out of my book. I refuse to believe that Sam Houston or George Washington or Ben Franklin or some of the other important men we've discussed tonight joined Masonry for this. Like, they were part of an enlightenment. They were searching for something. And some of these guys, like George Washington or Ben Franklin, like, they served as masters of their own lodge, or Ben Franklin as grandmaster, right? And those are all footnotes of their biographies. Like, they don't talk about how Ben Franklin was grandmaster of the Grand Lodge. They talk about everything else that he did. But it's, when these men are joining the fraternity, they're joining because they want what they're promised. They're seeking light. They're searching for Masonry. And if we don't deliver Masonry to our Masons, then what are we doing? Our degrees are there to teach something, not to like say a word and then move, and then say another word and then move again. Like, that's the degrees for the candidate. It's not for the committee on work. It's not for the past masters. It's not for the grandmasters. The degrees for the candidate. And we are making new Masons. That's what we're in the business of doing, making new Masons. And we got to deliver on the goods that we're selling. Yeah. And if all we're doing is promising and promising and promising and under delivering, we're going to kill our fraternity. I don't think it'll completely go away, but the numbers that we once had, we'll never get there in our lifetime. Maybe with some future distant time, there might be, but not in our lifetime. I don't see that happening there. But it's a journey that we have to deliver upon what we're selling.
I think
Like,
when
100%.
someone, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I said I agree with you 100%.
I think when someone petitions, they're either looking for Freemasonry or a membership somewhere.
Right.
And if they don't find Freemasonry, their options are like we said. If they're just looking for membership, well, that's exactly what they get. And
Right.
and unfortunately, if they're looking for membership and that's what they get, they're more inclined to remain. And I think we have kind of deluded ourselves as a fraternity. I mean, we talk about numbers, we talk about how low our numbers are. They really should be lower. We had actually been diligent all along, and that not necessarily been a bad thing.
Yeah, we compared the numbers to some other jurisdictions. I mean, most of them never got as big as the U.S. did. And when I tell people that I belong to a lodge that has 300 members, I mean, Gray Lodge doesn't have that many anymore, but it did when I was master. And when I was master, we were averaging about 90 people a meeting. And when I
Wow.
tell people that, it blows their mind. When I go to another jurisdiction, I tell them, like, yeah, I had 90 people at my April meeting, because most jurisdictions don't do that. When you get too big, the custom in England, for example, if it's going to take you more than 15 years to be master of a lodge as a new raised master mason, it's time to split the lodge up and start a new one. That's just kind of the norm. That's what they're told to do. And that's why there's so many lodges in England. It's just because once a lodge gets too big for something, you're supposed to be master of your lodge. That was kind of the intention in their mind. So if it's going to take you more than 15 years from the day you get raised to be master of that lodge, then it's time to split and start a new one.
Interesting.
And it's a cultural thing, I guess. But
Love it.
I think that they're right on par with what we need to do. When you look at it that way, and you look at membership may split, and you may lose a certain amount of members from your lodge, you might think a little more closely as to what that membership is going to look like. You might look a little bit closer as to how you're going to vet your candidates coming in the door. That way, if you do get to the point of splitting, you're going to have excellent people in either one. You're not going to lose all your best guys or your best brothers to another lodge if it splits. So I think you would be a lot more serious about your selection process if you fell under that guise.
fair enough.
In my final thoughts, what I got from you tonight, right, Worshipful, is in order to fix what's broke, it's going to start at the lodge. It's going to start at the Blue Lodge. It's a grassroots situation to where not only are we being a better brother for our brothers, but we're also being better mentors. We're being better servants. We're really being the Freemasons that we ought to be. The other solution to the problems that we have in the Grand East, back behind the Grand East, is also solved at the Blue Lodge level, because all those brothers have got to they're the Grand West. So all those brothers have to make a decision. We're going to do better than what we're doing today, and get up there to decide on how our Freemasonry is going to be. We have to make that decision. I think that all of it boils down to the Blue Lodge. If we don't educate our brothers to expect more from themselves and from others around them, then how are they going to expect more from their Grand Lodge if they don't think that that's the norm?
No, it's kind of what I said earlier, man. We've gotten to a point in our culture and within our Grand Lodge that the tables are not where they should be. And again, the Grand West elects the people to serve us as our servants, essentially. Like they're there to serve us. Like we give them the reverence, but people forget that. And other jurisdictions outside of the U.S., not so much here, but outside of the U.S., it's if you get elected, you're expected to work. And by work, I don't mean you're expected to go to a fish fry and shake hands and rip. Like, no, you're expected to work. You are the leader of that organization. So if you're not willing to roll up your sleeves and clean the toilets with the rest of the brethren, then why did we elect you to run this lodge or whatever the case may be? So the culture has definitely affected that, and we're backwards. We forget that the members elect the leaders.
Dennis, you made me think of an example in Roberto. So I'm an educator, and I work with students. And granted, we're not dealing with children. I mean, sometimes we act like children, but we're not dealing with children. But I think the human psychology overall, there's some things that don't change. And I believe where I'm going with this is in the classroom, what you tolerate is what becomes accepted in the classroom, if that makes sense. If you let kids do something that they shouldn't and you turn a blind eye to it, they will continue doing that. And in fact, they'll do it more boldly as time goes on. And I think it's the same thing with adults. Especially in leadership positions, what you accept, what you allow to happen, if you don't nip it right when it shows itself, it's going to continue happening, and the people will get more bold with it as time goes on. And I fear that's what we'll see if we don't find some way to nip things now, right off the nip it and say no. As this goes back to what Dennis is talking, that this starts with the lodges themselves, but as the Grand West, we have to say no, and we have to do this in our lodges too. We have to say no. This is not tolerated. We're not going to allow this. You cannot behave this way in our lodge. We have to hold one another accountable in our lodges, but by extension, we also have to hold one another accountable further on as well at the grander scale.
No, you're right. Again, let me be clear. I'm not calling for a revolution, but we're at the brink of one, right? Like I want to make sure that I say that.
Yeah.
I'm not calling for a revolution, but we are on the brink of one, and it's been very apparent about everything that's happened, right? And so what you're saying with like, it's not going to, like, it started, and people are asking questions, and that's why I'm getting the questions asked that I'm getting asked when I travel around the world and go to a different jurisdiction, is because we're under a microscope, and a lot of the things that we as Texas Masons pointed and laughed at and said, "What the hell is Arkansas doing?" or what is South Carolina like? Now they're doing it us. And
I was just fixing to say that.
I remember reading those things. I was like, "Oh, I'm glad we don't have that in Texas."
Yeah, and now that's us.
And then some. Everything's bigger in Texas, so we got to blow that out of the water.
Oh,
but
sure.
and I'll echo what you said. I'm also not calling for a revolution or anything by any means. And by that token, revolution has various definitions too. I'm not saying we're going to go overthrow anything or anything like that, but sometimes it's just a revolution in mentality.
Oh, sure.
A revolution in the way we approach things. And so I don't know what it will look like. I'm not saying that it's going to be definitively one thing or the other, and I'm definitely not calling for that. But I think 10 years from now, we're going to look back at the way we used to do things. And it's either going to say, I wish we had changed that back then, or wow, that was really backwards back then.
Oh, absolutely. But I mean, and to answer one of the questions that you said earlier, like, I mean, just bring it back to that point. I mean, 10 years from now, what does Masonry look like in Texas? It all depends on what happens at this Grand Lodge. Because there is a lot of bombs that are just waiting to go off. And instead of acting on them or trying to diffuse the situation, 3 other ones are getting lit. So Texas Masonry is going to be a different place in 10 years unless certain things get fixed. Peace gets made, hands get shook, or something. I mean, we're in a weird place, and it's I'm ashamed to say it, but we're in a weird place right now.
It's both exciting and scary at the same time.
Very, very.
Dennis, did you have anything else you want to add?
It all boils down to, well, that wasn't my closing statement. It all boils down to resolve, in my opinion. You know, it's time for us to be intentional with our Freemasonry and show resolve in getting this fixed. We have to make the decision for ourselves. We can't. We can no longer look to the the other Mason and say, hey, what are you going to do about this? What are you going to do about it? What are you going to do about it? It all happens. It starts with us. And like the past master that I love the most from my Blue Lodge always told me, it's good for the lodge, do it. If it's not good for the lodge, don't do it. But he never told me to be anybody different than myself, which is one hell of a anarchist. But no, I'm not. I am not chaos. I am not chaos. But but just like you, and you've had an effect on me without even knowing it. Just like you, I choose not to let anybody tell me what my Freemasonry has to be. I refuse to let anybody tell me how good it can, that this is as good as it gets. I travel wherever I need to find the light.
No, that's what I've done. I mean, I belong to Blue Lodges in 30 different jurisdictions for that very reason. I mean, the Masonry that you want is out there. You just got to find it. I mean, it just depends on how stupid you are, how much money you want to spend. Be crazy like me and join that many lodges, but just don't tell my wife. But
right. Yeah, it's that secret account. That's the real secret in Freemasonry. It's that secret account that you pay all your dues.
Yeah. So what are your final thoughts, Dennis?
All right. So first and foremost, I want to thank you for coming on. Right, Worshipful. It has been a very good interview. I think that when people, going back to the very beginning of the interview, when we start talking about all the things that you've done, I think when people see your Masonic resume, they're going to be flabbergasted, and they're going to feel like I do, and any normal person would, and say, I just have not experienced Freemasonry. I have been lazy and deserve to have my tail whooped for not going out and seeking this kind of light, because it's there. I think that also I want to tell the brothers out there that see this Masonic resume, don't start asking people to join all these organizations, because a lot of them you can't ask, or you'll never get in. So just keep your mouth shut and keep seeking the light, and it'll come to you. I just had to say that.
No, yeah, that's good advice, because most of the invitational bodies, a lot of them have like that unwritten rule that if you ask for it, you get put on a blacklist. So it's one of those, like, you gotta be careful, and sometimes accepting an invitation right outside your immediate circle will get you blacklisted and other things too. I've seen that happen more often than not, and that's a good warning, and that's really good advice, because I've seen it happen to a lot of people, a lot of good people. They just didn't know any better. They weren't coached, and again, instead of being whispered good counsel in their ears or something like that, they're just like, well, went around the system, let's destroy his life.
Right. Yeah. Yes. So to all those listeners that are going to look at this, this is the perfect example of somebody seeking all the light that this worldly lodge can bestow. And I think that we should all do that. That's a reason why I travel, and a reason why the smartest men that I know in Freemasonry are well traveled, because they don't just sit in their jurisdiction and complain about Freemasonry. They go elsewhere to see how it's done in other places, so that they can bring it home and make the best out of their lodge that they can.
Amen.
Of course that comes with a little resistance sometimes, but it is what it is. If we don't ask, it goes to the ask, seek, knock. If we don't ask, if we don't seek, if we don't knock, it's never going to happen.
Yeah. We say all this in our rituals, man. You got to knock, you got to ask, you got to be searched for it, and then you're given the opportunity to go out and find that light. So our rituals tells us that we have the right to do that. So go do that. I mean, search for your true Masonic experience. If you're not getting what you are expecting at your own lodge, like, to the best of your ability, try to find it somewhere else. And if you can't, bring it back to your own lodge. We'll talk to your worshipful master and be like, hey, why don't we do this? Try to spark your own activity. You're responsible for your own experience at that regard. So you could bring it back.
Absolutely. Love that. And for those of you that are watching this and you feel like you're on that island that a lot of us feel like we are when we first join, we can say we've been there. That's why we do what we do. It's why we have this podcast. It's why we have people like Right Worshipful Sanchez on our show, so that you can see that it's not abnormal to seek more and to travel and to do things. And it's not abnormal to refuse what the minority says, so that you can find the majority of Freemasonry that you want. There's so much more that could be talked about in this show, and I know that you've had quite the Masonic journey. Real quick before we leave, I would like to know what if you want to tell some people all the exciting things that have happened over the past few months, because I know that there's some great things that you've been working on and working with and a part of, and I'd like for our listeners to hear it.
So, are you focusing on anything in particular? Because it's been a very busy year. So I
Well, no, go ahead, brag on yourself, because I know that there's been some exciting points this year.
Again, I mean, do you want to kind of hone me in? It's been a very busy year, kind of all over the world, literally.
Well, what's happened since July?
July's been an interesting thing. I went to Latin America, to Brazil in June, where I was given patent letters for 3 different Masonic rites to bring them into North America. So they're seated in Mexico right now, but I have been installed as the Grand Commander of the Adoniram Rite, the Brazilian Rite, and the French Rite, all regular practicing rites that are practiced in Brazil, which Grand Lodges that we are in recognition with in Texas. Several appended bodies in Brazil have recognitions with them, and I've been traveling down there for years, just kind of participating and going through the stuff, and they gave me charters and patent letters. So that's been a busy endeavor with that as well. And also around that summer as well, I got advanced in the line for High 12 International. So I'm now the first vice president of that as well. We are rebranding High 12 as a whole. High 12 is an appended body of Freemasonry, and come July of next year, I'll be the international president of that order. But High 12 is a place where you can have Masons of different hobbies or different things come together and have a honed in, focused club. So if you like smoking cigars, you can charter a cigar club. If you like drinking whiskey, you can have a Scotch tasting club. If you like reading books, you can have a book club. And it's with a Masonic flair attached to it. So it's an interesting organization for sure. So those 4 things have kept me busy all by themselves, not to mention everything outside of those. But those kind of all hit this summer, and that's been interesting. That's been a fun ride.
Well, I have to say, I am stoked for you that you received the patents and the basically walking papers, so that you can establish rights in North America. I just think that's awesome. Out of all the things in my Masonic journey that I would hope to do, besides being Grand Orator someday, that would be one of them. Would be, taking Justin, just because you can't talk, people.
Grand Lodge is only 3 days. I don't think they let you be ordered.
But that one honor in a whole entire Masonic journey, that one honor of being chosen by those three rights to carry the patents to North America. I mean, golly.
Yeah, that's huge. That I cannot believe it myself. And it wasn't just, it's not one right. It's three.
Yes.
It started with one. I like just asking questions. I wanted to know more about the right, and once I got there, they was like, "Well, no, Jack, help this one too, and this one too," and it just kind of like grew out of proportion. And here we are. I'm holding 3 patents, and I have a charter for every one of the little subordinate bodies too. So like I have the right to confer the degrees. They're not legal in Texas to confer, so I will clarify by that. They're legal organizations. Masons can join it, but they can't be done in Texas because they're not in Article 225 or 225A. So
right,
it cannot be done in Texas. So you would have to travel to Mexico to be inducted into these, or Brazil or something like that.
I got a few friends in Mexico.
Jurisdiction that did, but the patent, the patent states that I have entirety of North America. So from Canada to Panama and anywhere in between is my jurisdiction. Wow. So if you think about it, that is, I mean, you're looking at hundreds of grand lodges just between those walls there. So
I was just thinking you accomplished more since summertime than most Masons will in their entire Masonic career.
Right.
That's just a summer for Roberto Sanchez.
Yeah.
Well, it goes to show, and I know that we have already gone past our wrap up, so we're going to have to wrap up the wrap up at some point. But it just goes to show that when you seek the light and you're working to better your own Freemasonry and better to better your own experience and to better the experience of others, opportunities just happen in Freemasonry. They really do.
Oh, for sure.
You know, that's how we get. I won't say we. That's how one would be chosen to do different things is by showing true grit in persevering and making sure that the light is available for everybody.
Yep.
Amen.
Cool. Well, I want to be sure we're respectful for everybody, including our guests. So that said, let's go ahead and wrap this up. Right Worshipful Sanchez, I am deeply appreciative of you taking the time out of your evening to come onto our show and talk with us this evening. And Dennis, as always, I appreciate you. I appreciate you, man. Appreciate having you.
You appreciate me not talking as much.
Well, again, guys, thank you for the invite. I appreciate you hosting this podcast and spreading the light and trying to get Masonic improvements. So I appreciate you guys doing this and hosting and inviting me to come out and talk.
Awesome. Well, thank you again.
Thank you so much. Now, are you going to be in Waco in January?
Oh, I wouldn't miss it for nothing. I wouldn't miss it like that. This is going to be an interesting Grand Lodge, if nothing else. And that would be a shout out to anybody that if you have a vote, like don't squander it. I don't want to hear complaining like, well, no, you should have shown up if you didn't like the way things turn out. I mean, that's one of the rules that we have as Masons. Once the crow sings and the votes get tallied, like you can't complain if you weren't there to vote. So you get a vote, you get to demand what we want, and it's our job to demand from our leaders that we follow the laws and the precepts of Freemasonry, and demand that our Grand Lodge maintain that society of friends and brothers who can best work and best agree as intended at our inception. Instead of using those tools to persecute and attack our enemies, then, my brethren, we need to remember that we're wearing those aprons, and if we're not doing that, we're not wearing them correctly.
Love it.
We're not wearing it with honor. We're not wearing that with equal pleasure to ourselves and honor to the fraternity. So we need to show up and not complain and vote with our feet, right? If we don't, we're just parrots playing pretend and grown men playing wrestling.
That's great. Well, thank you again. And with that said, we will see you, the listener, in Waco in January.
Giddy up.
Or else I don't want to hear you
between the
complaining.
points.
Yeah.